Games rated E to M. Welcome to Nintendo Power Podcast. This episode, we share our favorite Nintendo holiday memories, and yours too. My name is Chris Slate. Joining me today are Bill Trinen from Nintendo Treehouse. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Chris.
And Per Schneider from IGN. Hi, Per.
What's up, Chris and Bill?
Nothing much. Thanks for coming on the show, both you guys. And, in keeping with the spirit of the season, we're going to start this episode by talking about our favorite Nintendo-related holiday memories.
Oh, I thought it meant you were going to give us gifts.
Ooh.
We'll see if we can hurry and quickly buy some gifts before you guys leave and pretend like we had them all along. But if you're a gamer, chances are some of your best gaming memories are, connected to the holidays. Maybe it's a great game you got, or that time you got a great system, or just all the time you spend when family is together playing games. So, I thought we'd share some of our memories and then also some of the memories from listeners that they shared with us over Twitter. So, Bill, do you want to start off with your favorite Nintendo holiday memories?
Yeah, mine is actually, it's very early. It probably maybe predates both of yours. And it was back in 1983 when for Christmas I woke up in the morning. I was one of those kids who would wake up at like 4:30 in the morning on Christmas to run downstairs and see what was underneath the tree, which drove my parents mad. So it was probably like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was so excited. I woke up and I went down, and underneath the tree was a tabletop Game & Watch Popeye game. And that was not because I was a Nintendo fan. It was because I was a very big Popeye fan as a kid. I loved the Popeye cartoons. I loved the Robin Williams movie. Saw that in the theaters. I was a huge Popeye fan, and so that was like, it was the first Nintendo product I ever owned, and really my way to Nintendo was through Popeye. And what's funny is, of course, back then it took two C-size batteries, so you had these big giant batteries that you would have to put in there, and they would, they lasted a pretty good while for electronics back then. But I used that tabletop Game & Watch Popeye as my alarm clock that woke me up every morning all the way through high school, before I finally got an alarm clock that was a real plug-in-the-wall alarm clock that I took with me to college.
Do you still have it? Do you still have the Popeye?
This is the saddest thing, is that I do not still have it. And in fact, probably about 3 years before I started working at Nintendo, I was getting ready to move to Japan, and so my parents said I had to get rid of all this stuff at their house, and we had a garage sale, and I sold it at a garage sale for a lot less than it was probably worth at the time, and a lot less than it's worth right now.
Wow. That's too bad. There's too many sad stories like that. And I was a huge Popeye fan when I was a kid too, and I remember I never got to play that specific version, but I remember the Nintendo arcade game Popeye. And I was a big fan of that and had that game on NES too.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. I played a lot of arcade Popeye in the arcades back in the day. I was always terrible at it, but I loved it.
Yeah, it's an underrated arcade classic in my opinion. I really played it a lot back then.
The Game & Watch game was a little bit different. It was, the one in the arcade had you sort of climbing ladders and going up and down, trying to collect hearts and then punch cans into Bluto. But in the Game & Watch game, it was set up where you were, Bluto was on a dock and you were Popeye and you were kind of punching towards him. The whole thing was a fist fight, which was awesome. And you would have to kind of dodge backwards to avoid his punches and then lean in and punch him. And then there was a swordfish that would come up underneath and try to stab you in the feet through the dock. It was a fun little game, and it was, of course, the score. You'd kind of get your score up, and eventually, I think the highest score you could get was 999, which was, of course, I did that many times.
Wow,
that's awesome.
All right, well, Per, when you think about the holidays and Nintendo, what comes to your mind?
So I don't know. I think I'm a little older than most of you or your listeners. So I'm I don't have a memory of running to the Christmas tree and getting something Nintendo. Although I did get the Donkey Kong cartridge for the Atari home computer back in the early '80s. I got that for Christmas. No, but my favorite memory was actually Nintendo Christmas holiday memory was much later in 2001 when Wind Waker, The Legend of Zelda, came out in Japan. I think in December, like right before Christmas, and I had an import Nintendo GameCube, the Panasonic Q, a unit that never came out over here. If you remember that one, it could play DVDs as well, and so I could not wait for the US release, and I imported Wind Waker. And my daughter was a year and a half at the time, and we played the game. Despite her young age, we played the game together. And I just have all these vivid memories of her sitting on the couch next to me. I swear, one of her early words that she spoke was Ganon. So, in addition to dad and mom and all that. And she just, something about the presentation of Wind Waker just captured her. And she would walk by and she'd ignore most games. But with Wind Waker, she'd be like, oh, and just sit down and just, watch the TV or walk up to it. And that was also the first time she tried out a controller and she interacted and she ran with Link in circles and unfortunately into the ocean a couple of times. But yeah, it was just one of those moments where I realized, my life would change as I had kids, and my experience with games would change. And so, of course, I had 3 kids, so I have a perfect 4-player Mario Party team now and the Smash Brothers team. But that was kind of the first glimpse that I'd be playing games together with my kids.
Now, I know from listening to you on IGN's NVC podcast that you talk about playing with your kids a lot, and it sounds like they're actually pretty big gamers. So would you say this is where her love of gaming started, was with the Wind Waker? I think it cemented her love for Nintendo games. My boys will play on all consoles and PC and all that, but my daughter always goes back to Nintendo games. So whenever a big new Nintendo game comes out, that's what she spends all of her time doing. Whereas, the boys kind of like move in and out. But when it comes to multiplayer games, it's always on a Nintendo platform. That's great. And well, for me, thinking back, I kind of have different holiday memories now of when I was a kid, and also now that my kids are into games as well, similar to you. But from when I was a kid, nothing beats when I got my NES. I think it was back in '86, and I was about 14 at the time. And my grandmother used to spoil me rotten. She bought me all my, when I was younger, all my toys and action figures and things like that. And then when my interest turned to games, she got me that. And I'd seen the commercial for the NES and how it had Rob the Robot. And it just seemed like this cool thing that was way more advanced than any other game system I'd ever played. And so my grandmother, again, spoiling me rotten, bought me the deluxe set for Christmas, and I also got Kung Fu and Excitebike and Urban Champion. These were games, for the most part, that I'd played at the arcade and really wanted to have at home. But what was interesting was I'd never played or even really heard of Super Mario Brothers, and that came with the set as well. But by the end of the night, by the end of Christmas Day, basically, I'd put all those other games to the side, and I had fun with them, but I was just so hooked on Super Mario Brothers that I just remember sitting there and playing that all night, and just being, going from, any kid who likes games to becoming like a gamer, where that's my lifelong passion, was basically that Christmas and that game. And then 2 years later, I also really strongly remember Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link came out for NES shortly before Christmas. But because of that, again, my grandmother bought me the game, but I couldn't have it until Christmas. And my best friend at the time got the game, and was able to play it straight away. So there was a few agonizing weeks where I was kind of reading his instruction manual and living vicariously through his stories. And I remember he got to the final boss of the game, and we were talking on the phone as he was playing it. And I was actually telling him stuff to try. And I guess because it had worked in other games, I'd suggested that he just kind of duck down in the corner of the screen and just keep hitting sword. And that ended up working. So that's something I used to brag to him about, is that I helped him beat the game without having seen it. But all that came from just being desperate to play that game. And when Christmas finally rolled around and I got the game, that was amazing. And then, just more recently with the kids, getting my son his first Nintendo Switch and, helping him set it up and seeing the games that he gets into, and kind of being able to pass that kind of thing that you love down to your kids. And my daughter's not as into games, but certain games like Mario Kart or Animal Crossing, she just loves. So, it's been really great to play with them over the holidays too.
Yeah. We have 4 Nintendo Switch systems at home, so one for each kid, including this big one. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so anytime a game comes out that's a big multiplayer title, I buy Pokemon 4 times, or Civilization's actually one I'm kind of looking at right now, whether I should get back into it just to play multiplayer with the kids. It's so much fun.
Yeah, when you basically got your built-in 4-player team, or in my case 3-player team ready to go, that really opens up a lot of things with games.
Yeah, you need one more kid. I have plenty if you need something like that. Send them over.
All right, now I also wanted to, as I mentioned, share some of the holiday memories that listeners have shared with us through Twitter. And I'm going to start with Maru Dan, who says, 2 Christmases ago, my wife got me the NES Classic Edition. It was so great to have my whole family sit around and play through all the games, with my dad commenting on which ones he used to play with his friends while he was in high school and college. And I thought that was a really cool story because, just like we were just talking about, the idea that you can connect with, across generations with these games. And I've certainly done that with my kids with the NES Classic and Super NES Classic is, today's games are great and they have the fancy graphics or whatever, but, sometimes you have to go back to the start and really appreciate these games that still really hold up very well.
I'm a little jealous too because we've grown up with these games, and we kind of we took the step from the NES to the Super NES to N64 and so forth, and obviously have seen the evolution of the Mario franchise with Mario 64 and later. But now you have a generation that played the newer games first. So you have somebody who plays Super Mario Odyssey, and then you put Super Mario World in front of them. It must be a really different but really, really cool experience to see all the characters they know so well from the 3D realm in 2D in a sprite art. I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, my son, he really got hooked on Super Mario Maker. So when he goes back and looks at Super Mario World or some of those earlier titles, he's familiar with that aesthetic from Super Mario Maker.
There you go, yeah.
So the next memory here comes from Harrison. He says, the Nintendo Christmas memory I cherish the most is when I got my GameCube in 2001. At the end of our gift exchange, I was resigned to the idea that I wasn't getting one. Suddenly, my parents pointed to a tree outside with a gift perched on a limb. I ran outside through the cold snow, grabbed my gift, went back inside, and opened it. It was the GameCube I'd asked for all year, complete with Super Smash Bros., Melee, Rogue Squadron 2, and Pikmin. I immediately teared up and hugged my parents for a solid minute. Now, have you ever participated in or kind of been on the receiving end of any kind of holiday surprises or psych outs?
I remember when I got my first bicycle, it wasn't under the tree. I was, I had all these different presents and, opened them, was excited. And then my dad said, "Oh, can you go get me some tissue papers from our bedroom?" I'm like, okay. And I ran into the bedroom, came back, gave him the tissue papers, and he goes, "Oh, you didn't see anything else in there?" And so I went back in the bedroom, and there was the new bike. So they tried to surprise me and totally failed. So needless to say, I haven't tried that with my kids the same way.
No. We had when I was a kid, we used to you'd go to Mass on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning, and there was a family across the street from us, and apparently what my parents had done was they sort of negotiated with the parents of this house across the street, and so we left the house to go to Mass on Christmas evening, and there was nothing under the tree, and when we came back from Mass, all the presents were there. And it was the most amazing thing that had ever happened on Christmas.
I grew up in Germany, including, in our case, you get your presents on Christmas Eve. So on the 24th, I think it's different here, right? And then we have on the 6th of December, we have St. Nicholas Day. So that's when Santa Claus actually brings, you've got the red stockings with candy and chocolate and little chocolate Santa Clauses and all that. So it's a little different.
Well, cool. The next one here comes from Adam. And Adam says, my favorite Nintendo holiday memories are always shared with my brother, Jordan. We don't live in the same state, so when I get to visit for the holidays and we play Super Smash Bros., Mario Kart, or Pokemon, it's always the best. And we talked about connecting over generations during the holidays through games, but also just reconnecting with family and having everyone in one place. I think games can be a part of those holiday traditions.
Yeah, as somebody who's moved around, with friends still in Germany and Japan, it's very nice now to be able to connect online too, and kind of reconnect remotely and play these games. So.
Yeah, I always end up being the guy that brings the latest games over to the big holiday get together, and sets everything up, and then basically I just end up hanging out with all the kids the whole time.
So we still bring out Nintendo Land when friends and family are over. For some odd reason, we always gravitate back to Nintendo Land and some of the like Mario Chase, some of those games. We'll play those multiplayer.
Yeah, those are great for that kind of get together.
Yeah, in our house, I think it's mostly Mario Kart, and it's, my parents had a Wii set up in their house, and so the kids would always go down to the basement and just play Mario Kart on the Wii all Christmas long until dinner time. And now we will tend to go over to my brother's place, and he's got one, and his wife is a big Mario Kart fan, so he and his wife have it set up downstairs, and so the kids still all go downstairs and play Mario Kart. And every once in a while, I'll go down and join a race, and then they kick me out because they can't beat me, and so I have to go back upstairs and hang out with the adults.
Yeah. The game we used to always bring out, and I got to bring that tradition back now that you can play it on Switch, was we used to always play Dr. Mario. Even my mother-in-law does not play any video games, but she'll play Dr. Mario. And so, I forget which version it was. There was a 4-player version. We always played that one as a family. But, they're the whole LA family is coming up in 2 weeks. So we're going to break out some of the multiplayer games and see if Dr. Mario is still the one.
Yeah, I think that was Dr. Mario 64.
That's 64. That's right. Yeah. I still have that, too. I can bring that out.
Yeah, those are great. It's always great when you can find that one game that your non-gaming relatives will get into. My dad was never into games, period. But there was a while where he got hooked on playing Tetris on Game Boy.
Yep.
And so, yeah, when you find that, it's definitely one you have to come back to.
For my dad, it was Donkey Kong, the original Donkey Kong.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, this next one comes from OMG Yellow. And she says, getting a Nintendo Switch from my 2 older brothers. It hadn't come out yet, so they made me this elaborate pamphlet that went through all the Nintendo consoles page by page. The last page had a pic of Nintendo Switch and the words, "You're getting it from us." Man, I was in tears. Now, I have 2 sisters that I love very much. I don't think I've ever done anything nearly that nice for them.
Wow. Yeah. I gave my son's my brother's son, I gave him a Nintendo Switch for Christmas. Mainly because I went to visit my family in Germany, and on the way to the airport, I live 2 hours from the airport. On the way to the airport, I noticed that I had forgotten my Switch.
Oh.
And so I'm like, no, what am I going to do? It's a 12-hour, 13-hour flight to Germany, and my wife's like, let's just stop and buy another one. And so we pulled over on the way to the airport. We had time because, German, I'm early. And we bought a new Nintendo Switch, and then, hatched the plan that after the Germany trip, I'd give it to my little nephew in Germany. So I did a nice thing.
Yeah, and I'm realizing here that you're Nintendo's best customer. So please continue.
Yes, that was my 5th, I think, that I bought. We'll talk about Pokemon Joy-Con later and see how I'm doing on that front.
Uh-oh.
All right, well, the next memory here comes from Ashton, who says, my dad got my brother a Nintendo DS, and I was excited because I wanted to play Mario Kart DS with him. But then I realized my dad had given him my system. This ruined my day until I opened my next gift, which was a Nintendo 3DS. After that, I was the happiest kid on earth.
There you go.
That's kind of a fun psych out for the parents, but there's a couple of grueling moments in there for the kid, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I think, a lot of families have that history of the hand-me-downs, especially with siblings, and especially with younger siblings. You get the older system, or rather you get the newer system, and maybe they get your older system.
Yeah, we've done that a couple of times too.
Yeah.
Are they getting the hand-me-downs from a sibling, or are they getting the hand-me-downs from you, Per?
From me. My daughter got my Nintendo Wii U hand-me-down, and then, I got another one. And I think my son got the first Switch I owned, and certainly with Nintendo 3DS, some of the special editions, I got the Monster Hunter one, I got the Metroid one, and so when I move on to the Metroid one and transfer my stuff over, I'm like, all right, so then I bequeath it to one of the kids.
Yeah, I have a little trouble letting go. I'll give I'll give the old system, but I'll say this is yours until the end of time. But if you ever decide you don't want it, Dad will take it back.
Okay. I thought you were saying until the end of the next 3 years, and then it goes into the glass case.
Yeah. All right, up next from James, he says, for Christmas 1996, our dad braved the crowds to get us a Nintendo 64, but he didn't think to get any games for it. Still, my brother and I were so excited we stayed up late clutching the controllers and watching cartoons.
Oh, no.
That's rough.
Oh, no.
I mean, I'm hoping that the next day, they went out and got games or something. But I think, when you're dealing with parents, there's always or non-gaming parents, there's always a little bit of risk involved. You don't know what they're going to come home with, if it's exactly what you asked for, if it'll have all the pieces.
And then depending on where you lived, I remember during the Nintendo 64 days, some games during the holidays were not always readily available. Like it was very difficult to get a hold of GoldenEye or Wave Race 64 at one point. Even Pilot Wings was not that easy to find. Super Mario 64 obviously was front and center. So I hope you got that.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully
Fast.
the next day they went out and corrected that.
Exactly.
Next from Sydney says, my parents were still wrapping presents on Christmas Eve when I came downstairs for water and saw an unwrapped Wii U. Before my parents could say anything, I yelled upstairs to my sister about the Wii U, and we spent Christmas Eve playing Mario. Bill, were you ever a naughty kid? Did you ever try to peek early and see what was under the tree?
Well, no, we didn't really peak early, but like I said, we woke up early. Like we were up at 4:30 in the morning, every year, which I was dreading when I had my own kids because I expected that they would do the same thing. And some like I think one of the first years where my son was really old enough to really get Christmas, we like had to wake him up at 9. We were like, dude, come on, what are you doing? Don't you want some presents?
Wow, times have changed.
My Christmas mornings are always the kids waking up at like 6 or something and pulling me out of bed, and I'm like stumbling around half awake. And then, of course, that's when you want to take all the pictures of everyone.
See, that's, again, for us, it's on the 24th and it's in the evening. So we just, the kids are playing with their toys all evening. And then eventually we get too tired and we're like, all right, we're going to bed. Who knows how long they stay awake.
Yeah, my daughter is she gets a bit more excited on Christmas morning. So she tends now to get up a little bit earlier. But still, we're not, nothing quite as crack of dawn as me and my brothers used to do.
Yeah.
Well, I think in general, people always get excited on Christmas morning, but perhaps none more excited than Brandon, who shared this last memory with us. He says, when I was 10 years old, I was so excited to get Donkey Kong Country for Christmas that I threw up on my grandmother on Christmas Eve. That is a mixed bag.
Oh, no.
I'm hoping he did get Donkey Kong Country the next day, or else that was all for nothing.
Exactly. Beautiful family memories.
Wow.
Well, next I want to ask each of you, in terms of holiday gifts, if you could pick one Nintendo-related gift that you'd like to receive and one that you'd like to give, what would those be? And Per, we'll start with you.
Oh, the one I would like to get, I already hinted at, are the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee Joy-Con, which are exclusive here with the in the bundle, right? The Pokemon bundle. So I can't justify buying the 5th or 6th, who's keeping count, Nintendo Switch for the home. So I'll have to figure out if somebody will just gift those to me. I'll trade them some gray ones.
Yeah, and that's a conundrum because from what I understand, you collect.
I do.
The Joy-Con. Do you have all the other variations except for these?
So I have right now I'm rocking double greens, but I have every one except for the Smash Brothers and the Super Smash Brothers gray themed ones and the Pokemon ones, and then of course there was the special Labo competition that had the cardboard looking ones, which are freaking awesome looking. I'm missing those, but all of the commercially available ones so far, yeah. Oh, that's man, great. I'm totally gonna break down and get them.
Well, it also comes with that nice design on the dock as well.
I know, I saw that. Bill, I did see though that if I don't know how much flight tickets to Japan are right now, but I think the Pokemon Center in Japan sells them separately. So I might have to take a little trip out to Tokyo there.
I suspect a flight to Japan would be more expensive.
Do you think it's more than the bundle?
System.
Okay.
And then if you were to leave your Switch at home accidentally, then you'd have to buy another one.
Trust me.
Anyway, for the flight to Japan.
That is the first thing I check now. Before underwear and socks, I'll check that I have the Switch with me.
And then what is the gift you'd like to give?
I think that'd be Civilization 6. for the Nintendo Switch, and the game obviously supports 4-player local play. I have wonderful memories of playing Civilization on a computer, when I was younger, but also got my youngest son really hooked on the franchise, and he played it. I think he played it on the Mac. And then we played Civilization Revolution on consoles before as well. And so everybody loves this franchise, and it just came out on Switch. So I might have to spring for that and give that to each kid. Don't tell them.
All right, Bill, what about you? The gift you'd like to give and the gift you'd like to receive?
Well, the gift that I would like to give, there's actually, so my older brother, is a huge fan of the arcade version of Donkey Kong. And in fact, he describes his Switch as his Donkey Kong machine. He just likes to go and play Donkey Kong on there. Now that you can play the NES classics, you can play the NES games through Nintendo Switch Online. So he just likes to sit and play Donkey Kong. And of course you've also got the actual original Donkey Kong arcade version available through the Arcade Archives series. So that's what he uses his Switch for mostly, and I think his wife then plays Mario Kart. But for this holiday, our merchandising team has actually gone and they've worked with a company to create a Christmas tree ornament that is an exact little miniature replica of the Donkey Kong arcade cabinet. And then it has, when you press a button on it, you can hear the original music. The
That's great.
So I think that's probably the Christmas present that I would like to give my brother, who also is hopefully not listening to this, because he would love that.
I thought you were going to say you're going to give him the original Donkey Kong arcade machine.
And I don't love him that much.
You could tell him that's what he's getting, and then you can show up with the ornament.
Yeah,
that's
right.
going to be a pleasant surprise.
Because I want that too if you're still shopping for me.
Yeah. And then I think the other gift that I would give is I would get the Smash DLC for my kids, because I know that they're going to want that. My son is already, he's already got all sorts of plans about spending his own money to get Smash Brothers ahead of Christmas because he can't wait that long for it. So, so I'll at least get him the DLC.
Good idea. I'm going to have to do that too.
Well, that's great. And it's funny you mentioned Donkey Kong, because the gift that I would like to receive, and I'm aiming pretty high here, would actually be an original Donkey Kong arcade machine, because I've always thought, if ever I was to have one arcade machine just to kind of collect or display in the house, that would be the one, because for some reason, even I played a lot of games in the arcade when I was a kid, but that was the one that has kind of stuck with me, and I think held up well, and kind of to me defines that kind of era of my own personal kind of like video game history.
It's a beautiful machine too. It has the light blue sides, and the original. The graphics are really cool. The prints on the sides. I've thought about it many times as well. I have one arcade machine at home. I have a Super Pac-Man, which is kind of like a more rare version of Pac-Man, like a sit-down unit, cocktail unit. But I always wanted the stand-up version of Donkey Kong. But I haven't seen one that was affordable and in good condition,
Yeah, and realistically, that would be my concern. Is I think these days these machines are getting so old that it's not just are they in good working condition, but then you have to kind of start to learn a little bit about how to keep them that way.
They were built to last though. And a lot of the CRTs, the monitors look really good still. But those machines last. They're really well built.
Oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be too concerned about that then. If I ever have a windfall and can have that much disposable cash,
it's the cabinet. It's the cabinet that's a little bit more tricky. So,
See, it's funny, Chris, because the gift that I would like to get the most is actually that original tabletop Game & Watch Popeye. I still, to this day, I regret having sold that at a garage sale. But somewhere in the North Seattle area, there's somebody out there who has. They bought it at a garage sale many years ago, and they don't realize it, but it was mine.
So you haven't done the thing yet where you try to buy back your childhood? For example, I have the Zelda Game & Watch, the two-screen one, and I have the Game & Watch Zelda watch as well, the physical watch. So I've gone through and bought some of the things that I had as a kid that I no longer have, including board games and stuff.
Yeah,
I've
I keep looking. I've been to Akihabara looking for it, and I've never seen it there. I have seen a few on eBay, and I've been really close to kind of clicking the buy it now button, but have never quite gotten that far.
Well, if I see one at a garage sale, I'll grab it.
Yeah.
Maybe it has Bill scratched into the back.
I'm lucky in that, like anybody, I've lost a lot of stuff that I used to really treasure over the years, and I have tried to get some of it back, especially some of the games for older systems. But certain games that really meant a lot to me, I held on to. So I was going to mention this earlier that that when I got that my NES in Christmas of '86 and that copy of Super Mario Brothers, I've managed to hold on to that same copy all this time. And I was lucky enough back when I worked on Nintendo Power Magazine, and was I think I had an interview with Mr. Miyamoto, and he was kind enough to sign that copy of that game for me. So I have that hanging up in my office at home. Yeah,
I have a signed Super Mario 64 box.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's a good one.
That one, and that was the original one I had too. In hindsight, I should have gotten a new one just to make sure that the cardboard isn't scratched or anything.
Oh yeah, and then just to close this out, the present I would like to give is a Nintendo eShop card with a list of some indie games that I think deserve more attention. Like a lot of Nintendo Switch players, I've played a lot of indie content this year, and 3 games that stand out to me that I don't always hear people talking about were Iconoclasts, which is kind of a Metroid-style game with a story that I really, really enjoyed, and then Always Awakening, which is another Metroid-style game that really is perhaps of all these kind of retro style games is one of the more authentic ones. It really feels like an old NES game. And then Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon, which is a very Castlevania inspired game that came out not too long ago.
Very quiet release for this one because there are 2 versions of Bloodstained, right? There's the more retro one and the more modern looking one. And this one kind of snuck out, and not a lot of people are talking about it, but it's really good.
Yeah,
it's a good recommendation.
Especially, all the talk about the Castlevania series lately with the new season of television, and then also with the characters being added to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Yeah,
really got me in the mood for that classic Castlevania type of experience.
I can't wait for the music.
So I'm curious.
So much music.
Curious, Chris. Do you like Metroidvania style games?
That's about 50% of what I play. I could also add on there Hollow Knight and some other ones, but I think those have already gotten a good look in from a lot of people. So now we're going to move on to our usual Pros Picks segment. This is where we talk about games we've been enjoying lately. Bill, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to probably take the easy answer, which is I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Let's Go, and it's kind of funny because I sort of play Pokemon Go off and on, and I think like a lot of people, I start playing a lot more in the summertime. And with some of the changes that they'd made to Pokemon Go, I kind of have kept playing even post-summer. And so once Let's Go came out, basically one of the first things I wanted to do was get to Fuchsia City so I could start transferring my Pokemon from Pokemon Go into Pokemon Let's Go. And so I just kind of blazed through the first part of the game so that I could get to Go Park in the Safari Zone. And so as soon as I was able to start transferring, and I'm sitting there and I'm transferring my Pokemon between the 2 games, all of a sudden I had sort of this existential crisis, and I was like, oh my God, am I supposed to be doing this? Like this, something about this doesn't quite seem right. I mean, but then ultimately after kind of that first sort of moment of kind of guilt and concern, I got over it, and now I'm like really actively playing both Pokemon Go and Pokemon Let's Go and having a lot of fun transferring my Pokemon between the 2. And of course trying to get to the point where I can evolve Meltan into Melmetal.
Yeah, I can imagine after you spend all that time collecting all those Pokemon on Pokemon Go, there is that moment of like, I know they're all protected here. Is it really okay for them to go to this other place? But I imagine, and I haven't gotten to that point yet. I've started. I've put in a good amount of time so far, but I've really been taking my time, like just fighting probably way more Pokemon than I need to, just so I can get my experience levels up and capturing way more, I should say. So I'm not quite to that point yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I wasn't a huge Pokemon Go player, but I do have a nice set that I'm eagerly looking forward to porting over.
Are you playing the Pikachu version or the Eevee version?
I'm playing the Pikachu version.
Same.
And my son's playing the Eevee version. So that was by design, so we can trade Pokemon and kind of take slightly different routes through the game.
We have 2 of each, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're trading too.
Yeah, I was originally planning on playing Eevee, but my daughter decided she wanted the Eevee version, so my son and I are both on a Pikachu version. We each have our own copies, so we've got 3 copies of the game. But
Yep.
I feel like I have more of a connection to Pikachu through Super Smash Brothers, so I always kind of gravitate toward him if given the choice.
See, my first Pokemon game was the Yellow edition. Back then we didn't cover handheld games that much on IGN, and that changed, I feel like, with the Pikachu edition. So I have all these fond memories of that game, and then I went back and played Red, Blue, and the Japanese Green.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the Pikachu edition was the first Pokemon game that I worked on.
There you go.
So I have fond memories of it as well.
Maybe that's why I love it so much, Bill.
But yet you betray Pikachu at the first opportunity to go with Eevee.
No, he saw his ways. They're still good in him.
All right, well, Per, what? It sounds like you've been playing Pokemon as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Or?
Yeah, that'd be a cop-out answer now. We're all playing that. Honestly, there are 2 multiplayer games that are dominating our time right now. One is Tricky Towers, which is another indie game. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've played that one. It's a Tetris-like game with physics where you it's not just about you don't get rid of lines. You actually build towers, and it's a race to get to a finish line. Mm-hmm. And then the more difficult multiplayer modes introduce like wind and things, and so can knock over your towers. Really fun, awesome 4-player puzzle game. But the game we're playing the most multiplayer is Diablo 3. So obviously Blizzard's famous RPG series landed on the Nintendo Switch, and I can honestly say it's the best version, because it, especially when you're lucky enough, like our family, where we have 4 Nintendo Switch systems and 4 copies of the game, there are no interruptions. So you team up with 4 players, you go adventuring. If somebody stops and goes through their menus, and you do that a lot in this game because there's so much loot to compare and pick up and drop, you don't have to wait. Whereas previously, when you're playing on one screen, for example, you have to wait for the other players to close their menus. So it really is a really smooth and awesome experience. And I had played the game before, but I'd never leveled up to level 70. So that's the big quest now that we're playing. It's really, really good.
This was the first time I've played any Diablo game.
Really?
And for some reason it wasn't big on my radar, but I really started getting sucked into it. And once you start, the game plays just so smoothly, and then once you start going in there and collecting loot, and you get that urge to get more and more stuff, and then it just becomes an addictive game that's hard to put down.
Yeah, and it's obviously this version has some of the characters that were added later to the game, like the Necromancer, and so those were characters that we didn't explore when we played the game before, and now we have each player is a different character, and it's just you see the variety of all the different upgrades and magic and all of that stuff. It's a really good game.
Well, for me, other than Pokemon Let's Go, I've really been playing a ton of Super Mario Party lately, and particularly over Thanksgiving. My kids now are at the age where not only are they interested in playing games, but they're interested in kind of playing these types of games together. And I never really had that before with past Mario Party titles. Honestly, I just never found myself in opportunities where I had a lot of friends together and we were going to play that. So I'd largely missed out on like the big draw of the series. So I finally got to experience that over the Thanksgiving break, and we probably played 7 or 8 hours of the game. And it was great because I felt like there was just enough kind of wackiness to it, with some of those bonus awards you get at the end where, any one of my kids, had a chance to win. Yeah. But it wasn't, it wasn't to the point where we felt like, we weren't having an impact as we were playing the game. So I thought that was balanced pretty well.
Did you play Did you play the 2v2 mode?
No, we played. We just played the straight board game.
Okay.
It was, of course, my son and daughter would make their own little alliances and team up against Dad.
There you go.
Sometimes we would all team up against the one CPU player that we had in the game. But no, it was just pretty much the normal normal mode.
The team mode gets very, very strategic because you don't just move around the board on a preset course. You actually have to draw arrows, and you have to kind of work with each other. And so we started playing that, and that's all we play now in Super Mario Party, because there's the strategy and collaboration element. And so when it's my youngest and I playing against the teens, my teenage kids, they're kind of like huddling off, and they're like, no, you go to the left and you go to the right. It's really, really fun to strategize that way. That's my favorite addition to that game. That's such a great mode.
We'll definitely try that next.
Yeah.
Now that we've done every board and we've started to kind of repeat ourselves, we can mix it up.
You'll love it. It's really smart.
Cool. Well, next. Oh, sorry. Before we move on, I did want to say that some other games, very briefly, that I've been enjoying: Mark of the Ninja Remastered.
Oh,
and
great!
Ninja Gaiden. Great to play that again on Nintendo Switch Online. But I specifically, Per, because you're here, I wanted to mention that in honor of you being on the show, I went back and played some more Picross S2, which I know you're a fan of, and I myself have completed almost every puzzle in both Picross titles, and I'm always up for a new Picross game.
Yeah, it's one of those franchises where I keep on talking about it, and it's tough to share your passion for a game that's a grid with numbers, right? And so when people see you play it, they're like, that's not for me. But I guarantee it's for everyone, right? Once you start playing, you understand the system, and you realize the brilliance of the puzzles. It's so difficult to stop. And full disclosure, the reason why I had to buy that additional Switch was because I needed Picross during the flight. So I re-downloaded that one.
It is the ultimate kind of time machine game where once your brain gets in the zone, and you can be watching TV or movies or whatever as you're doing it, but you're still, it doesn't take away from the experience at all.
Yeah, and obviously if you on the 3DS and the DS, there were a couple of really cool Nintendo themed versions too, like the Zelda one.
That was great.
With Twilight Princess built in, and Pokemon, and some good stuff.
Do you have every version of Picross?
I don't think I have Mario's Picross from the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't own that cartridge, but I have a lot of them.
Yeah.
But at least the ones on the Nintendo systems, the Jupiter made ones. Yeah.
Picross 3D as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love 3D. It's good.
Yeah.
That one took me a while to rewire my brain, but once I got into it, I really enjoyed that.
No, it's great too.
Well, great. The next segment is the Warp Zone quiz. Now, this is where I provide clues, and you guys try to guess games that came out 10, 20, or 30 years ago. And these will be games for November. This episode may not come out until early December, but we're going to stick to November games here. So, first off, 10 years ago, in November of 2008, the clues are Nintendo published a game for Wii that featured DLC, text chat with a USB keyboard, and voice chat with the Wii Speak accessory, plus a cat named Katrina and the bright lights of the big city. Any guesses?
Yes.
I think I know this, but I'll let you go first, Per.
Well, Animal Crossing, that's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, I really needed to ramp up these clues, I think, for you guys. You're pretty much experts.
You had me going those text chat, for a moment. I'm like, wait a second. And then Wii Speak was the obvious one. But there are not that many games with cats named Katrina, I think.
No, there are not.
That came out, that was in November?
Yeah, November 2008.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, you could actually buy that game bundled with the Wii Speak device.
I have a Wii Speak.
All right, 20 years ago, November of 1998, Nintendo published an adventure game for Nintendo 64 in which you can play music, talk to a tree, gossip with stones, and hunt for spiders, or just fish all day and night. Any guesses?
Well, that would be The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
That's exactly right. I sat here trying to think of harder clues for that, and no matter what I did, this game is so well known. I just knew you guys would get it, so I didn't stress out too much.
It's also, that's the iconic 20th anniversary right now.
Yeah, you guys just on NVC just did a whole episode about that.
Yeah, and Ocarina of Time, before Breath of the Wild came out, was my favorite game of all time for a very, very long time, and before that it was A Link to the Past. So I'm a Zelda kid, and so it's just. Ocarina of Time is just so unforgettable, and I've played it so many times, including the 3DS release as well. I feel like I know everything about that game. I don't know if there are any secrets left that I haven't seen in the last 20 years.
Oh, are
you thinking of something that you hid in there?
I was trying to think of something, but I do think that game has the ground has been covered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do. You mentioned the 3DS version of that game. I do really love that version. And nostalgia aside, I think that's my preferred way to play that game now.
Yeah.
It has really great stereoscopic 3D.
It's gorgeous in 3D. Definitely a game where I turn the 3D way up. Ocarina of Time is just so good.
Mm-hmm.
We need it on Switch.
I was wondering if maybe you were gonna, kind of dodge Ocarina of Time and instead choose, something else that launched in November of that year. But I was trying to remember because I felt like Rogue Squadron maybe released November of that year.
Yeah, and Yoshi's Story was also around that time, right?
Yoshi's Story would have been earlier.
A little
I think
earlier,
maybe it was earlier in '98. The other game and I don't know, maybe it came out November or December, or maybe it ended up being later. I can't remember, but there was a game called Glover.
I was going to say
right.
Glover too. I thought he would pick something like Glover.
Yeah, there was no way I could not recognize the 20th anniversary of Zelda, though. I mean, Ocarina of Time. I felt like we need to give it some little nod at least.
Yeah. Do you remember playing Glover, Bill?
I remember, Ocarina of Time was the first project I worked on at Nintendo, and at the time I was working as a contractor in testing, translating bug reports, and so I was translating the bug reports on Ocarina of Time, but there was this small little group of guys sitting right near us that were testing Glover at the time. And so I saw a lot of Glover, and I played a little bit of it, but not a whole lot.
It's one of those. It was made by Hasbro, I think. It was one of those games that took inspiration from Super Mario 64, but then did something different with it. You played as a white glove that could balance on balls, and so it would change the controls whenever you're balancing on something. It's a very clever game. Almost forgotten.
Yeah, I
If you
do
see the
remember
cartridge,
it.
buy it.
Yeah, I don't think I ever played it, but I do remember it.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, well, the last one, 30 years ago, November 1988. Let's see if you guys can have an easy 3 for 3 here. Sunsoft published an action game for NES in which you pilot an armored vehicle that can drive up walls in your mission to destroy radioactive mutants and find your pet frog. Any guesses?
Wow, what is that?
That's a tough one. I didn't play a lot of third-party NES games back in the day. I played all the Nintendo stuff, a little bit of Mega Man, but this doesn't ring a bell.
A little hint is that Inti Creates released a cool remake of this game on Nintendo Switch last year.
It's a Bionic Commando? Like something... Oh, wait, no, they did... Inti Creates did... Master Blaster? No.
Close?
So what's it called again? Super Blast... Why can't I remember it?
I'll take that. I think you're close enough. You had it flipped around. It's actually Blaster Master.
Blaster Master. There you go. Yeah, that's right.
And then the remake version was called Blaster Master Zero.
Okay, that's what it was.
Pretty cool.
Oh, man. Yeah, I did not play Blaster Master when it came out originally. I did play the Inti Creates one.
Well, I feel good that the last one gave you guys a little bit of pause. Yeah.
Yeah, you stumped us.
Before we go, I want to cover off on the game forecast, where I'm just going to quickly run through some of the key games that are coming out for Nintendo Switch in December and also January, since we'll have the big holiday break. So I want to go ahead and touch on some of those games as well. Starting on December 4th, we have Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. Then on December 6th, we have Carcassonne. And also on the 6th, we have Fortnite Season 7. Then the next day on the 7th, we have Katamari Damacy Reroll and Sega Genesis Classics and a little game called Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Then on December 10th, we have Guacamelee 2. And on the 11th, it's Desert Child. And then on the 13th, Dragon Marked for Death. Also on the 13th, Gris. And then in January on the 4th, we have Fitness Boxing. And on January 11th, we have Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Journey. That's for Nintendo 3DS. And then also on the 11th, we have Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. And on the 18th, Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes. And then finally on January 24th, Smite Closed Beta begins. So that's a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's a good mix of classic classic stuff. I've got to get the Genesis collection just to play Toe Jam and Earl. Great 2-player game too. But yeah, I didn't realize Gris is a really cool game that people shouldn't sleep on. I was lucky enough to play Wonder Boy at Gamescom, actually at the Nintendo booth, and that looked really promising. Kind of like classic, almost a little bit like Castlevania, where you could play as a frog and swing almost on a whip, but it's a tongue.
Yeah, and
frog.
This one's Monster Boy, but it's very inspired by Wonder Boy.
Monster Boy.
Yeah.
Boy.
And there was a Wonder Boy kind of remake that came out on Nintendo Switch a little while ago.
Yeah, so that looked really good. Lots of good stuff. I wasn't familiar. What was it? Super Smash Brothers? What is that?
Some Nintendo thing Nintendo's doing.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, it's probably good.
I wasn't sure if that was a game or is that just like a collection of like 900 songs from video game history?
I think it's video games. The game is essentially what this game is.
You're joking about the music, but that is one of the big reasons I want this game so much. It's just the collection of music in it, even without the Final Fantasy and obviously Castlevania, one of the great soundtracks of all time. Even without that, you have all these wonderful core Nintendo melodies. I'm just gonna put it on jukebox mode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and it does have jukebox mode, so you can, which I think is actually going to make it harder for you to forget your Switch when you go to the airport, because you're just going to want to have it with you and listening to it like it's a MP3 player. I've always just been a huge fan of the music in Smash Brothers, and it's funny because every time they try to do something more, and I think this time they've really gone above and beyond. So I'm really excited for it. Some of my personal favorites in there are the Hip Tanaka remixes of Balloon Fight, the Balloon Trip song.
That's great.
Yeah, I haven't heard nearly as much of the music as you, Bill, but a couple of tracks I've heard from some of the trailers, the Castlevania music, and then also, and I can't remember the specific name of the tune, but the one that played for the reveal trailer of King K. Rool, which is like some old Donkey Kong Country music remade. That just loops in my head whenever I think about Smash Brothers. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to actually playing some matches with that music in the background.
Oh, that's right. There's a fighting game in there too, alongside all the music.
Yeah, they do. Yes, it does have a fighting game in it. I thought you guys were going to torture me when we're talking about what games you're playing. I thought for sure you'd both say Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. But
Bill maybe could, not me, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh man,
that's having to wait. Although it does come out the day before my birthday, so. Looking
happy birthday.
That'll be the centerpiece of my birthday weekend. Thanks.
Yeah,
that's
happy
great.
Birthday. I have been playing it.
I've seen you play it.
Right. Well, Perry and Bill, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, and have a great holiday season, and happy holidays to everyone. That's it for this episode of Nintendo Power Podcast. If you have any comments or questions you'd like us to consider answering on the show, you can email us at nintendopowerpodcast@noa.nintendo.com. Also, we always appreciate it if you can leave us a review, and be sure to subscribe so you can get new episodes as soon as they're ready. Thanks for listening, and keep playing with power.